From the introduction found in the GM core for the Pathfinder 2e Remaster on page 4, you read these words. Though the word Master is in the GM's title, it's not a role that requires or even benefits from absolutism. Pathfinder is a collaborative experience, and while your role as a Game Master is one of adjudicator or moderator, it doesn't mean you control everything at the table, especially not your players or their characters. Nor does the role require mastery, either of the rules or the setting. You'll need to understand the game, but you don't need to have every rule memorized. When everyone shares the goal of having fun and telling a story together, the details will fall into place. Simply put, those are the best words Paizo has ever written. And with that, you could probably skip this video. But today, we're going to talk about what it takes to be a storyteller in Pathfinder 2e on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I'm the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that still feels incredibly underqualified to talk about the actual qualifications for being a storyteller. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome to Storytelling in Pathfinder Remastered, a series that's going to be talking about the tips, the tricks, and the skills that help make for a fantastic storyteller in Pathfinder 2e. In this series, we're going to be working through the content that is found in the Gamemaster core for the Pathfinder 2e Remaster, and we're going to be looking at the various things that Paizo highlights in this book to help storytellers perfect their craft. Now, something I want to say up front about this video and the future videos in this series is, well, I am redoing a series that has previously been done on this channel. A while back, I did a series called Storytelling in Pathfinder 2e, and a while back, I did a video called The Best Words That Paizo Wrote. In fact, it's one of my favorite videos that I've ever done, and this video is going to be, in many ways, a copy of that original video that I did. Previously, I was working through the old Gamemastery guide for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, along with some of the Game Master-focused content that was found in the old core rulebook, but last year, Paizo announced the Pathfinder 2e Remaster, and as part of the remaster, they also announced that they were going to be reworking several of the core products for Pathfinder 2e, meaning that the old Game Mastery guide was going to be reworked as the Game Master core for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So while I am still very proud of that old series that I did, it is a series that is built around a book that is no longer in publication, as Paizo has switched over to the Game Master core. So I made the executive decision to redo the storytelling series and work my way through the Game Master core so that these videos are aligned with the current product that Paizo produces for storytellers. With that being said, a lot of the content that was in the old Game Mastery guide can be found in the new Game Master core. A lot of it hasn't really changed at all. In fact, the opening of this video, The Best Words That Paizo Wrote, those are the best words that I read from the original Game Mastery guide. So, if you were someone who was following that original series, a lot of the videos in this series are going to be covering the same content from the same angle. They're going to be looking at things that we have already discussed on this channel, but I'm also hoping to work in some new content and some new ideas as we move through the Game Master core, because honestly, I had to cut the original series short, and there were a lot of conversations we never got around to. So with that in mind, this series is for anyone who is interested in storytelling Pathfinder 2e and learning how to improve their craft. Well, actually, this series is for more than that. Because one of the things you will learn about storytelling in any TTRPG is that a lot of the skills that make for a fantastic storyteller transfer from game to game. A good storyteller in Pathfinder 2e can transfer over to a game like D&D 5e or Call of Cthulhu or some other game like that, and with a little practice and a little work, very quickly become a fantastic storyteller in those other systems. Which means that even if Pathfinder 2e is not necessarily your preferred game, I still hope that this series is something that is very beneficial to you. I think Paizo does a good job laying out a lot of the tools that help storytellers to be successful, and I think there's a lot of practical advice that Paizo gives that storytellers in any game system could potentially borrow and transfer over to other games. Also, there's another group that I really hope that this series reaches out to, and in fact, this is the primary audience for this entire series, and that is the people who have never told a game before, but are interested in becoming storytellers. Entering into the TTRPG hobby is relatively easy, and a lot of people give this hobby a shot, but it does seem like it's noted in many places around the industry that finding actual storytellers is a lot harder, and it seems like the hurdle of jumping from player to storyteller is a much more significant challenge. Now, we'll talk about this in a moment, but I think most of that hurdle is an unfortunate myth that has been built around the art of storytelling. But one of my big goals in this series is, if you are interested in giving storytelling a shot, I really hope that this series encourages you. I really hope that this series can give you just a little bit of inspiration to try telling even just a single game to see how it goes. I think that there are a lot of people in the TTRPG community, in the Pathfinder 2e world, in the D&D 5e world. I think there are a lot of people who have some great stories to tell, who just need a little bit of encouragement to get there. And if this series could offer that encouragement to even a single person, that would mean the world to me. So let's begin a journey into the art of storytelling in the Pathfinder 2e Remaster and see what it takes to be a successful storyteller. But before we do all of that, I do need to do the usual YouTube stuff reminder. Remember, if you enjoy content like this, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those will be linked in the video description. And in particular for this video, there are going to be several points where one of the best things you can do is join the conversation, jump down to the comments section, and share your thoughts, your ideas, your experiences trying out the art of storytelling, because I think that there's a lot that this community has to offer beyond just these simple words I have to say. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get started. I read a whole paragraph from the introduction earlier in this video, but I would like to reread a very specific part that I think is critical for today's conversation. Nor does the role require mastery, either of the rules or the setting. You'll need to understand the game, but you don't need to have every rule memorized. The role of the Game Master does not require mastery. That is, hands down, one of the most important things that Paizo says in the entire Game Master core, and if you are interested in storytelling in Pathfinder 2e, that is an incredibly important realization that you need to have. Oftentimes, people are afraid to try out storytelling specifically because they don't think they are good enough to be a storyteller. Also, as a quick aside, I refer to the role of Game Master as storyteller. That's just the terminology I prefer. Paizo defaults to the classic Game Master, so that's the term you should expect to see in their products, but in these videos I'm going to go with storyteller because that's the terminology I'm more comfortable with. Still, I hope it should be clear that the terms are intended to be interchangeable. Whether you use the term Game Master or Storyteller or some other terminology, I think one of the most important things to recognize about the position of Storyteller is you don't have to be a master of the game in order to be a Game Master at your table. Over the years, I have heard many different people offer a variety of reasons for why they don't try to storytell. And some of the things I hear sound a little bit like this. I'm just worried that it's not going to go well, or I'm afraid I'll make too many mistakes, or even, Mark, I just don't know the game as well as you do. How could I possibly storytell? I appreciate Paizo's words pushing back against this idea because I think one of the biggest hurdles that keeps so many people from becoming storytellers is this mythological skill requirement that you must be so good before you can sit behind a Game Master screen. As a longtime storyteller, I would just like to say there is no skill threshold that you have to cross before you are good enough to try your hand at being a storyteller. There are a number of fantastic storytellers that I've watched online and that I have gamed with over the years, and every storyteller can tell you that they make mistakes. I have seen the legendary Matthew Mercer make mistakes as a storyteller. Is he still a fantastic GM? Of course he is. Jason Bowman is one of the designers for Pathfinder 2e, and I've seen him run a number of different games online. I think he is an incredible storyteller, but I've seen him make mistakes as well. By the way, Jason Bowman, if you happen to watch this video, I would absolutely love to play in one of your games sometime, so feel free to shoot me an invite. Sorry I had to call you out for not being a perfect GM. There is no such thing as a storyteller who has perfected the craft. In fact, I can guarantee you that any storyteller in any gaming system probably has at least one story that they would be mortified if you were to actually learn about just how badly they messed something up. Which means I'm going to tell you my story. Oh my goodness, I hate this story so much. Okay, so I've got to guard my ego a little bit. To set the scene for this, I started playing tabletop RPGs back in the days of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. Not even 3.5, 3rd edition. And back then, resources for gaming groups, and especially resources for storytellers, were just not nearly as prevalent as they are today, which means that when I tried to become a storyteller, I didn't have anywhere near the wealth of fantastic resources I have today. And one thing you should recognize about this story is I dove straight into storytelling. When I discovered Dungeons & Dragons and became interested in the game, I had a little bit of experience with the old Star Wars D20 system, but I had not actually played Dungeons & Dragons. But I knew I was interested in the game. So I made the decision to invite some friends over to my house, have them roll up some characters, and have them play in a D&D campaign. And let me tell you, this campaign that I came up with, it was going to be epic. I came up with this absolutely crazy political intrigue story where this monster had infiltrated a kingdom, and during the middle of this major festival, actually assassinated the king, and then my players were supposed to come into this situation and get recruited to investigate the assassination and hunt down this monster and bring it to justice. My plans for this story were huge. And the game died after a single session. None of those players came back. Not a single one. You may be asking yourself, what did I do that was so terrible that this amazing story that I had planned just fell flat on its face? Well, the problem was Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition had a system called challenge rating, and I did not understand how challenge rating worked. I had a party of level 4 adventurers that were supposed to find and take down a challenge rating 13 monster, and I genuinely did not understand why that was a terrible plan. To this day, I do not blame any of those players for refusing to show up for session number 2. And by the way, the challenge rating mistake wasn't my only mistake in that particular story. Another thing that I did is I came up with these really cool places for clues to be hidden that my players could discover, and all my players had to do to access these different hidden locations was use different types of magic to find the locations, which I thought was a perfectly appropriate challenge for, again, a level 4 adventuring party. The reality is, my first attempt at storytelling was atrocious. I did a terrible job. But if you fast forward to today, I actually get paid a little bit of money to talk about gaming and storytelling here on YouTube, and I have a fantastic community that hangs out with me to talk about these subjects, and people ask for my input and advice on how to be effective when it comes to storytelling games like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. What I hope is clear from the story I've just related is this. Yeah, I made some pretty big mistakes when I started learning how to storytell. But I did learn. And if you're interested in being a storyteller, you will learn too. Over time, with practice, with a little bit of effort, you will master the skills you need to be a fantastic storyteller. Mistakes are going to happen. Hopefully for you, not nearly as dramatic as the mistakes I made with my first game, but mistakes will come. But I promise you, with a little practice, you can learn, you can grow, and you can become a fantastic storyteller. So really quick, let's ask the question, what are the actual requirements to become a storyteller? If you want to storytell in Pathfinder 2e or another system if that's your preference, what do you actually need to have in order to storytell the game? Well, I think there are 3 requirements. Number 1 is some friends. Number 2 is some enthusiasm. And number 3 is some courage. Let's talk about those for a moment. First, in the paragraph that I read at the top of this video, Paizo notes that Pathfinder, like other TTRPGs, is a collaborative storytelling experience. This is a game that requires some friends to sit down with you in order to play the game. Maybe you're sitting across a table, maybe you're sitting across a computer screen, but either way, you need some people to come together to tell these stories. Now, there's a lot to be said about how to actually build a gaming group if you don't have one, and that's kind of beyond the scope of the conversation in this video. But as a simple premise, if you can find a few people who are willing to sit down and play a game with you, then you've already got one of the requirements to try out storytelling. And allow me to say, one of the things I've noted over the years is quite often there are a lot of players in TTRPG groups who are interested in storytelling, they're just kind of afraid to make that jump. Well, if you're already in a group, you already have a natural environment where you can collect some friends and take your first shot at being a storyteller. The second requirement is some enthusiasm. If you've watched any of my classic introduction videos talking about the different classes in Pathfinder 2e and what they offer players at the gaming table, there's a piece of advice that I give players all the time, which is, if you're enthusiastic about something, give it a shot. Classes in Pathfinder 2e can range from very simple, straightforward, easy-to-play classes to complex monstrosities that almost twist your mind as you're trying to figure out how these mechanics are supposed to work. Remaster Oracle win, Paizo. That joke is terrible. I actually think the summoner's worse. But one of the things that I've noted time and time again is I've seen players who were enthusiastic about a particular character concept do incredibly well with very complex classes. In fact, the Oracle and the Alchemist, 2 of the classes notorious for being the most complex classes in the game, I've seen relatively new players take those classes and do extremely well with them because they were enthusiastic about the character. Well, if enthusiasm is an incredibly powerful tool for a player, it is just as powerful for a storyteller. Storytelling in Pathfinder 2e can range from incredibly simple, straightforward games that are easy to tell to complex, multi-layered monstrosities that bend your mind as you're trying to wrap your brain around how to even do them. There is a scale of what storytelling can be, but regardless of where your story is on that scale, allow me to say, if you've got some enthusiasm for the story you want to tell, that enthusiasm is going to carry over to your players. A storyteller that is excited about their game is naturally going to draw some excitement from their players, and I'm sure there are many people in this community who can testify to the fact that a storyteller who is not enthusiastic about their game will drain the enthusiasm from their players. So when it comes to the requirements for being an effective storyteller, the second thing you really need is just a little bit of self-reflection to ask, is this something I am interested in? Is this something I'm enthusiastic about? Is this something that I'm excited to give it a shot? And on this particular point, there is a high likelihood that if you are thinking about being a storyteller, you probably already have some enthusiasm for the story you want to tell. That inspiration, that interest has probably already struck you, and you're just wrestling with what to do with it. So this requirement is, at least for most of the people watching this video, probably pretty easy to meet. I think it's the third requirement that is a little bit trickier, and that is some courage. Trying new things takes courage. I don't care what it is, stepping outside of your comfort zone is always going to be a challenge, and building up the courage to try something new is definitely something that takes a bit of practice. The first time I donated blood, I was terrified. The first time that I performed in front of people, I was genuinely terrified. To be honest, the first time I posted a video to YouTube talking about Pathfinder, I was terrified. And, hopefully this does not surprise you, there have been plenty of times that I have sat behind a Gamemaster screen and been kind of terrified about what I was going to do and just wrestled with questions of, is this going to go well? Is this going to be effective? Are my friends going to enjoy this game? I have been afraid to try storytelling many times. But thankfully, I've also developed the courage to give it a shot. Trying new things is always difficult, but there is a trick that you can use to make trying something new a little bit easier, and it's one that I think makes this particular hobby, tabletop RPGs, very easy to try. That is leaning on your friends. I mentioned a moment ago that the first time I donated blood, I was absolutely terrified. And that is true. I was scared out of my mind the first time I donated blood. I was so scared that what I had to do was I had to take like 4 friends with me to help keep me sane during that process. Now I donate blood on a regular basis. I've learned to handle that, and I'm more comfortable with the process. But that first time that I went, to gather the courage that I needed, I gathered some friends around me, and I leaned on them for support so that I could take that first step. Oftentimes, one of the best ways to try something new is to lean on some of your friends and let them be a source of courage, a source of support, so you can give that new thing a shot. And I hope you see where I'm going with this particular point. When it comes to TTRPGs like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if there's one thing this hobby has in abundance, it is people to encourage you. This is a collaborative game. This is a collaborative hobby. It's one of the best things about this hobby. Anytime you're participating in a game like Pathfinder 2e, you are, by definition, hanging out with friends and playing games with friends. And that means that you have a ready-made source of courage right there with you at the gaming table, or possibly across the computer screen. You have some people who are right there to help you out as you take those first steps. Over the years, I've seen several people give storytelling a shot. Some of them have only done a few games, some of them have done very long games, full campaigns. But I've seen many people take that first step into being a storyteller, and those fears, those concerns, always get brought up. Am I going to be effective? Do I know the rules well enough? I'm worried about how this is going to go. And one of the things I've seen time and time again is the people around them encouraging them. Go for it. We want to see it. We'll give it a shot. We know you're learning. I'm not going to pretend that the gaming community is always perfect. You have some bad actors here and there. But by and large, the amount of encouragement I've seen for new storytellers in this community is almost always amazing, and if you want to give storytelling a shot, I guarantee you if you speak up to your friends, you're going to have some people who are glad to support you. So at the end of the day, even if you're struggling to find the courage, if you can find some friends to help you with that courage, I guarantee you, you can take those first steps and begin to learn the art of storytelling. Now, obviously, there are a number of different skills that will be practiced and that you will learn throughout your career as a storyteller, but we're going to save those conversations for future videos. As I've mentioned, we're going to be working through the GM Core that Paizo published, and it's going to cover a lot of these topics. But right now, I want to leave you with a very simple thought. If you are interested in being a storyteller, give it a shot. You don't have to meet some mythological skill level to be good enough to try your hand at the art of storytelling. The reality is, you are good enough to try your hand at the art of storytelling. Will you make some mistakes? Sure, you will. I made some mistakes too. But will you learn? Will you grow? And will you improve? Of course you will. And I believe you have some fantastic stories to tell, and I think your friends will be happy to hear those stories when you're ready to share them. So for now, I want to turn the conversation over to you. What do you think about this introductory piece of advice that Paizo gives, this statement that game masters do not have to be a master of the game in order to tell their stories? Do you agree with me that this is the best thing Paizo could have written to potential storytellers? Also, let me know if you agree with the requirements that I listed in order to get started in telling Pathfinder 2e games. Leave your advice, leave your thoughts, leave your ideas in the comments section down below, and if you are an experienced storyteller who is brave enough to share your embarrassing story like I did today, leave that in the comments section as well. I really want to help Paizo in their endeavor to dispel this myth that there is a certain skill level you have to meet before you're even good enough to dream of being a storyteller. I know that there are a lot of fantastic stories out there, and it is my true hope that this series encourages people to give storytelling a shot for the very first time. In future videos in this series, we're going to take a look at the many different topics that Paizo addresses in this book. We're going to talk about some of the advice that they give, some of the tips and tricks that are beneficial for storytellers. I'm going to highlight some of the most important things I have found in this book that have helped me as a Pathfinder 2e GM. And in general for this series, I want to have some fun exploring the wonderful world of being a storyteller. Now, many of the topics that we discuss along the way are going to be the main issues that Paizo addresses in their publication, but as we move through this series, I want to hear from you. If there are particular topics or questions or issues that you have as a storyteller, especially if you're a new storyteller, please let me know, and I will do my best to make sure that we hit those topics and that we discuss those ideas. I want this series to be a resource to help us all become better storytellers and ultimately help us all have more fun at the gaming table. So definitely be a part of the conversation. It does help support the channel, just like the likes, the shares, and the subscribes do. And if you're interested in being part of the Disaster Tour Guide community, there is actually an Ask a Storyteller thread in my Discord. My Discord is completely free to join, and the links to that are in the video description. My Patreon link is down there as well, so if you would like to support the channel, that's another way that you're able to do so. But, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.